Hello! Is it actually working? Are things actually working? No, they're not. Cool. Give me a minute. Actually, is it working? It seems like it's... It seems like the resting level for the microphone is way too loud, but... I don't know. I'm gonna have to wait for somebody to show up in chat and tell me how things sound, because I can't fucking tell. But I hope everybody's doing well. This is my first stream in a long time where I've done anything right. And as you can see, there's still a long way to go on that, but I'm hoping that things will be serviceable today. Let's see, what are we gonna start with? Bowls, as in of strawberries, as in eat them. The War of the Doll, that's right. Hello, Pazer. How are you doing today? I don't know why I'm talking like this now. That's just what the War of the Dolls makes me think of, is this voice, apparently. Trove. It's not a good guess, but whatever. Oh, hey, you know, we'll take that. Did I steal the show yesterday? I wasn't acting yesterday. I was helping with a friend's short film. So what that ended up meaning is, more than anything else, I was just the guy on slate, meaning I was the guy with the clapperboard, and I would be like, scene 1 alpha, take 2 action. Except that's not how it works, because I would clap it first and then I wouldn't say action, because that's what... Well, it's what the first AD would do, but we had no first AD because it was a skeleton crew, so it was who was calling action? Who was calling action? The director, for the most part. So I was never on camera yesterday is the point. Unless you count holding the slate. Anyway, it was fun. I stole the production, that's right. I stole the entire production. It was just a few quick scenes for a friend's short, acting reel. Not only do I really like making stuff with my friends, but I like showing them that I'm good at what I do, and that the only way to make sure you make more stuff with your friends is to make stuff with your friends whenever you get the chance, right? That's how I see it. So I let them know I'm not always able, but I'm always willing, is what I told them. And it's the truth. How are you? Video works, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, that wasn't helpful at all. I feel like it might start that way, but oveny isn't a word, is it? No. Oh, you're going to Vietnam. I've never been. Nice, 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 nice. For pleasure? Vacay, eat some pho for me. I've never had real Vietnamese pho. You don't have to. I'm just saying if you get the chance and you want to, eat some pho for me. Does cover work? No, it does not. Oh, I didn't realize we're on a break. We're on an ad break, I think. I can never know with these notifications. They're real finicky. I hope everybody's able to log into Twitch, because I was not, actually. Like, obviously I've been able to, oh, it was a quick ad, good. Something to do with diplomacy, okay. Oh, yesterday's word, oh, well, for you, yesterday's word, yeah. What was I gonna say? Hello, Killer Pie, good to see you again. I know it's been a while. Yeah, we're gonna be reading more of my dad's book today, and then next week we'll probably go back to playing Satisfactory, because I've only gotten a couple streams in on that game. I haven't streamed in over a year. Yeah, you're right. It's been over a year for sure. It has been a very long time. There have been many different challenges. I started using Linux, and that proved difficult in terms of like bringing my OBS configuration over, which I still haven't done, and eventually just decided to stick on Windows for streams. And then I've had like mental health stuff going on, which has been part of why it took so long to get the configuration. Yeah, Windows 11 is butts, but it does have its uses, at least for me. Yeah. So the intent is to resume normal, weekly, predictable streams on Twitch. Normally I would have done, like, normally I've been doing these Eat the Strawberries streams at the end of every month, but I was not able to stream last week, so here we are. And again, next week we will get back to Satisfactory. I don't want to jinx it. What am I saying? Like, it always ends up being a jinx in some way or another. I have been working on new content for YouTube, just a little bit. So I honestly don't know what video is going to come out next, because I have 3 videos that I have started work on. So I don't know which one I'm going to finish first. The one that's closest to being finished is the one for Ori and the Blind Forest, but the one I was working on yesterday was one for Clair Obscur. So, yeah, some good stuff coming up. You almost gonna beat Mr. Beast? No, unfortunately. Unfortunately the Expedition 33 video is going to have major spoilers. There's no way around it. But yeah, just because I am working on 3 videos doesn't mean they're likely to come out in like quick succession. If I can get to a place where I'm releasing a video a month again, like I was a couple of years ago, that would be incredible. That would make me really happy. I did get a new job, which is very, very good for a lot of reasons, including that. Oh, you think everybody thinks stream starts 1 hour later because of DST? It's possible, but I pinged the Discord. I've done what I can. I don't know if other people are having this issue, but also I could not log in to Twitch on my browser. Obviously I'm logged in on OBS, otherwise I wouldn't be here right now, but I can't actually log in on my browser, and I don't know why. Everything's up to date. So I hope other people aren't experiencing that too. I hope it's peculiar to me. But yeah, so I have a new job. I'm essentially just a stream moderator for a brand of supplements. Yes, my password is password. Oh no, you're right. That's what it is. Somebody must have guessed my high security password. Dang it. But yeah, it's not glamorous work, but what I really like about it is that it's only 4 hours at a time, and so I'm hoping I can use that momentum to like slingshot myself into going home and working on YouTube stuff. We'll see. These are my hopes. I do think things are turning around for me, at least a little bit. 4 hours, it's flexible, yep. And it's possible that in time I can get more hours if I need them, which I probably will. But for now, look, my mental health has been such a challenge these last few years. And I don't know that I could sustain more than that right now. But it's been 3 years since I had it's been 5 years since I had a job where like every day I knew when my next shift was. So even just having a part-time thing is a major source of stress relief. And since there's a little more real estate in my mind, instead of just stress living rent-free there, rent-free is also a good way to describe my bank account, which has been the source of the stress. So it's good. It's good stuff. It's an upgrade for sure. Not living the good life, but baby steps. Much closer than I have been in a long time. I've got to finish Wordle, haven't I? Don't want to go for what's the record? Have I done a 40-minute Wordle yet? I know that 30-minute is like the legendary one. I did do a 30-minute Wordle, but I haven't even thought of a word in like 7 minutes, so baby steps is progress. I don't know if I'm comfortable calling it a 14-minute Wordle. I mean, so much of it has just been me talking about other stuff. Okay, so do we think O is the first letter or the fourth one? I feel like it's more likely to be the fourth one, but I'm blanking on any words that could be. And envoy? Boom, done. Envoy. Heck yeah. Let's read my dad's book. Okay. Boom, boom, pow. Hey, you were right. It was about diplomacy. All right, so where we left off. Oh, I forgot. I did want to take this out. Even though my dad's side of the family is Jewish and also atheist, it is Easter, and my mom sent me this in the mail. So happy Easter. It's only right that I have a bit of this on stream. Just a solid milk chocolate rabbit, and I'm gonna start with its ears. Where were we? Last time on Eat the Strawberries and the Chocolate Bunny, we were talking about how much nicer the world would be if everyone was nice. Which is that's a horrific oversimplification of what we were talking about. But that was the broad stroke. The broad stroke. That would have made you hungry. I mean, I can't say this is hitting the spot exactly, but I did already have breakfast today. Missed opportunities, such as the last several streams I could have done. Compassion for refugees from a war zone, or an oppressive government, or other dangerous living conditions such as poverty, is in astonishingly short supply, especially among religious fundamentalists of any religion. For many of us, theoretical compassion, which is really just sympathy light for these people, is easy, but the real compassion and justice of taking action is rare. But both of these large-scale issues are easy targets compared to what I want to focus on right now. Consider this scenario. It's someone's birthday, and some friends have gotten together to celebrate it. The usual factors went into the invitation list: how many people will physically fit into the party space, how emotionally close is each potential invitee to the guest of honor and other guests, are there any social obligations to consider, and so on. Some days afterward, someone who was not invited is upset about it. Let's call the birthday person Barbara, the upset person Alice, and one other non-invitee, Nancy. It's some days later, and Barbara and some of her close friends who were at the party are sitting with Nancy, pleasantly conversing. Alice comes up to them and begins to yell at Barbara in front of everyone else. Alice is upset that she and Nancy were not invited to the party. Publicly attacked and taken by surprise, Barbara sharply replies that Alice and Nancy have both been invited to Barbara's home several times and have never reciprocated, and have never invited her to any of their celebrations. The conversation goes downhill from there. How would it have unfolded differently if Alice had approached Barbara privately and said something like, "You know, Barbara, I understand that there are always limits on the guest list for a party, but I was hurt not to be invited. I feel like we are closer than that. Am I wrong?" But Alice is recently divorced for the second time and hurting in general. She had done a lot for the local community as a whole, even if she is uncomfortable developing close one-on-one relationships. So she felt slighted, unappreciated, alone, and didn't have it in her to take this more vulnerable approach. How would it have unfolded differently if Barbara had said something like, "I'm sorry, I didn't know you or Nancy would want to be there. We are certainly friends, but as neither of you has ever invited me to any of your celebrations or even into your homes, I just didn't think you'd want to be invited, and I didn't want to impose on you. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. Do you want to have a private conversation so the two of us can talk this out?" But Barbara was subjected to a surprising and public attack that implied she was an ungrateful and uncaring person, and put into an awkward position with Nancy, so she didn't have it in her to take this approach. Had Alice been operating from a compassion-first perspective, she would have sought to understand rather than condemn, and she certainly would not have attacked Barbara in front of the others, or brought Nancy into it involuntarily. Had Barbara been operating from a compassion-first perspective, she would have known that Alice's behavior indicated that she was in pain, and Barbara would have sought to understand rather than return fire. This illustrates what I said earlier about understanding not being equivalent to approving. We can easily be compassionate about their non-ideal but understandable reactions to each other. That means we should not condemn them or what they did, but we can still see how they each could have done better. If they see how they could have done better, they can do better next time, or even as a follow-up to this time. Quote, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better." Maya Angelou. I think about this a lot, actually. I think about how often I listen to what somebody else is saying and think, here's what I think they meant, and here's why I think they might have behaved the way they did instead. And I think about times where I say things and people get upset, and I'm like, okay, I can see what they thought that I meant. and in the future I will try to do better in that. And I realized that in a way I'm trying to come at it from both angles. I'm trying to both hear what other people are saying imperfectly and try to understand their point of view and why they might say that. But at the same time, I'm trying to change the way I speak so that other people don't have to do that calculation when talking to me. And I think that's probably, like, that is difficult. I'm not saying it's not, but I think that would maybe be a good place for everybody to aim. Just aim to understand as much as you can, and aim to be understandable as much as you can, even if those two things are not perfect reflections of each other. Like, be better at understanding and better at communicating. It's a tall order, but I think it's a good ideal. Clarity is hard. Clarity is incredibly hard. I'm sure there are things I've said this stream that I could have worded better already. But you know, that's life. There is nothing extraordinary about how this conversation unfolded. People behave non-ideally all the time, especially when distressed or attacked. People trigger each other all the time without that being their intent. The alternative conversation I suggested would in fact have been extraordinary. Hardly anyone has the presence of mind to speak thoughtfully about sensitive things when already feeling compromised. Once again, let us note that an ideal is good for setting direction, but not for measuring. We should define and strive toward ideals, but we should measure how far we progress, not how much more we can still improve. I like that when you read the comments, your line of sight directly points to the chat. That's funny. Okay, well, I will make sure I never move the chat dock then, because I like that. It's a little bit of immersion, just, what's going on down there? Anyway. In the above scenario, neither Alice nor Barbara was being malicious, just hurt. Although they could have been kinder, neither was engaging in a characteristic pattern of abuse. They were both just being human. So it has happened. If you were Alice, what would you do next, now that you've thought about it? If you were Barbara, what would you do next, now that you've thought about it? Why did I tell this mundane story? Small-scale stuff is where we spend most of our time, so it is how we shape most of our life, how we shape most of our impact on others. That makes the small stuff a big deal. Additionally, we stand a better chance of obtaining world peace if we get better at the small stuff first and make compassionate listening and speaking what our brain does by default, most of the time, even under duress. I think that's an excellent point. If you save all of your big ideas and compassion and worldview stuff for incredibly complex macro scale things, you will fail. You will. If you're not practiced at it, if you are not good at navigating your own personal friendships, how can you even hope to understand another people's needs, right? Or another group's needs, or just anyone's needs. If you can't understand your friend's needs, how can you understand anybody's? I think that's an important idea, to start compassion in the boring places, in the little places, in the everyday places. Don't measure it by what you do when you see an unhoused person on the street. Measure it by what you do when a friend pisses you off, or when you piss a friend off. That's where the rest of it comes from. When one is alone. The good and bad parts of anyone's individual life are all just part of human life in general. Even though they are very personally felt and personally important, they are also just generically human. There is a Buddhist parable about an elephant who became separated from its herd. After trying to find them for months, he had given up hope. He paused by a lake and drank from it despondently. A kind and perceptive turtle happened by and asked why the elephant was so sad. The elephant related the story of his loss, his search, and his loneliness. After giving it some thought, the turtle observed that loneliness is the absence of connection. He then encouraged the elephant to be here now with the wind, the water, the trees, the ground, then with his own breath, thoughts, and feelings. Apologies are hard. Where was I? Feeling alone while in the company of others is the worst kind of loneliness, and it is frightfully common, probably increasingly so. Feeling connected, even when literally alone, is the best antidote, and it is frightfully rare. No matter how idiosyncratic the details of one's experience may be, among the 105 billion people who have ever lived, many millions, or at least hundreds of thousands, have had experiences and feelings similar to yours at some point in their lives. You are never alone. You just can't always see your companions. The following counter-argument might come to mind. You might agree that millions of people have had misfortunes similar to yours one by one, but how many people have had the whole series of misfortunes you have had, and at the pace you have had them? Imagine, and it might not be hard, that your particular set of misfortunes is in fact quite a rare combination in human history. Maybe you have some pride in having survived it, rare or not. Maybe you feel oddly special because you have survived it, rare or not. Life is hard. I hope you do feel proud of what you have survived, rare or not. I understand if you feel that not everyone would have fared as well as you have in similar circumstance. Given the range of human nature and the range of human stressors, I'm sure that's true. Yet I risk your annoyance by pointing out that even those among us with lives that are much more stressful than average are not nearly as alone as we may feel. Why point that out? Because not feeling singularly alone helps us cope and heal. And because seeing even exceptional circumstances as being within the broad scope of the human experience makes it feel less personal. It's not really so much about you as it is about the vulnerabilities inherent in being human. Big losses are very personal and simultaneously not personal, just inherent to the human condition. Take account of both of these factors in how you process your losses. If your particular sequence of traumatic events put you in the top 1% of the most stressful lives ever in human history, from a population of 105 billion, that would still put you in the company of more than 1 billion people. Your pain is intense and real. Of that I have no doubt, but you are not alone. Of that you can also have no doubt. It's not only as personal as it feels, and you can heal. As you process what you have had and lost, today and in the years ahead, I hope you find peace in knowing that for all the specifics that make your experience uniquely yours, the human experience is replete with repetition. We are never alone. For me, a great deal of equanimity rests on awareness that everything we experience is just part of the human condition in general, and not as personal as it feels. Quote, "You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read." James Baldwin. If we didn't consider our private struggles so private, if we were more open in conversation with each other, we would see how very not alone we truly are. Paradoxically, we might not like it, but the truth is that even our most personal struggles are shared by millions. These things are intensely personal, and also not so uniquely yours. That's actually why I talk so much about my mental health. Part of it is that I want people who feel like me to know that they're not alone. I want people who don't feel like me but have similar emotions about something else in their lives. I don't want them to feel alone. And I say it because I don't want to feel alone. And the more I talk about what I'm feeling, the more likely it is I will meet somebody else who feels that way. I see no downside to being open about what we're going through. Sure, you don't want to trauma dump on like an employer. You don't want to trauma dump in the middle of a chat room, but I don't know, there's time and place. I don't think keeping a struggle completely to yourself is ever the best choice. Solace, even from a stranger, is comforting. Sometimes it's especially comforting from a stranger. You know how, like sometimes you just want to vent to kind of a distant friend because they're not wrapped up in all the drama and their opinion is not going to... Hold on. Oh. Their opinion is not going to change the outcome of things for you. It's just like a sounding board. It's nice. Helps you get some clarity too. In the above parable, the elephant genuinely recovers his sense of connection, even though it is not accompanied by reuniting with his former herd. He finds in his breath, thoughts, feelings, and his immediate surroundings things he shares with a great multitude. This helps him feel he is part of something much larger than himself. That makes the teaching offered by the turtle real for the elephant, and not an empty platitude. I feel like this is a good time to plug Found Families. Some people can't find nurturing, healthy, fulfilling relationships with their blood family, and that sucks, and that hurts. But it doesn't mean that you don't get to have a good family. It just means that you've got to find it. Regaining this feeling of and this is my personal opinion, but the people who gave birth to you, you don't owe them anything for that fact alone. Just like anybody else, they have to earn your respect. They're not entitled to it. Remember that. Regaining a feeling of connection when starting out at loneliness is surely harder to do when one does not have the convenience, pleasure, and support of close contact with good friends or wise turtles. What must you contemplate to realize the connections you still have with the world? Once you regain that awareness, how will your behavior change, and how will that lead to desirable changes in your circumstances, even if you never reunite with your former herd or with any particular individual? It's hard to know what you must do to genuinely move from loneliness to connection so that this teaching is real for you and not an empty platitude. Find out. More or less. A mother came to me many years ago with sadness about the state of her relationship with one of her children. She felt that her son was not thriving, and she was not able to help him as much as she wanted. We talked about his problems as she saw them, and some of the ways her attempts to help him had come up short in her own estimation. It was easy to hear genuineness in her concern for her son, and disappointment in herself as a mother. I was impressed with how very difficult it had been for her. Even though this was a discussion about difficulties, she never blamed her son. Her distress revolved entirely around her frustration with herself, feeling that she was not providing what he needed. I was also impressed by the complete absence of counterpoint in her telling. There were no illustrations of exceptions to the trend, areas of his life or their relationship that were going well, how it used to be better, or anything to break up the difficulty. Instead of focusing on tactics for any particular problem, I asked her, "When's the last time the two of you enjoyed something together?" She immediately got my meaning. Relationships get a lot of leverage out of shared pleasures, and without them, relationships rapidly devolve. His troubles were real, and her concerns were real, but allowing that to entirely push aside shared pleasure was a significant, although common, mistake. Focusing on problems seems like the right priority, but the most urgent and important thing is never the only thing. And the most important things are often helped by paying attention to less urgent things. Perhaps she needed to do less rather than more, to pick her battles, to focus on one or a few things at a time and not keep both herself and her son in a frequent state of overwhelming conflict. She definitely needed to do more, to add more positive experiences back into the daily life of the relationship. She did, and it helped more than a discussion of problem management tactics would have. When I used to work with children, the topic of effective discipline would often come up with parents or among my coworkers. I felt that the frequency with which this topic arose and the level of interest attending it were symptoms of insufficient relationship. If you are frequently focused on discipline, the question I encourage you to ask yourself is, why is discipline the focus here instead of such relationship features as mutual respect, trust, cooperation, consideration, and enjoyment? Instead of, I need to establish more discipline, consider, I need to develop a broader, deeper, more meaningful relationship and have more fun. Here is a common and sad marriage story. One spouse is more capable, or less stressed, or more focused on other people's mental health and happiness than the other spouse is. This spouse increasingly helps their partner and all family members deal with their issues. As a starting point, this is healthy. This is what loved ones and friends should do for each other. But this can become chronically one-sided. When one peer becomes the primary caretaker and the other the primary recipient, this imbalance, which most often but not always disadvantages the woman in a heterosexual relationship, eventually brings the relationship down rather than raising it up. The primarily giving partner is taken for granted, and the primary giver's needs become increasingly invisible and unmet. As emotional exhaustion and resentment creep in, less time goes into shared pleasures, emotional withdrawal sets in, and so on. This is a very common and very unfortunate pattern. We mustn't let exceptional support during exceptional times become the new baseline expectation. We mustn't relegate pleasures to the leftovers of our time, attention, and energy, if any, after we deal with everything else. Rather, we must maintain priority for mutuality and pleasure, especially as a resource when times are difficult. Mutuality and pleasure nurture us, renew our strength, and play a huge role in enabling us to weather life's worst. These are essential tools for helping us cope with life's largest demands, not secondary, optional indulgences, only to be fed with leftovers once all the important stuff is taken care of. I don't know what is more important to a relationship than mutuality and shared pleasure. Instead of the common pattern of, I'll get to that when I am less stressed and have more time, shift to reprioritizing mutuality and shared pleasures now, in the very midst of all the troubles. This is when you need it most. I think that probably carries over to your relationship with yourself as well. I know that things definitely started getting better for me once I stopped putting all of my energy into getting better and started putting some of it into just being a dude. If I could chart it, Peter, I would say discipline comes toward the middle of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When the basic stuff isn't met, a person cannot grow, develop discipline, and thus not reach self-actualization. I think I agree with that, yeah. Because discipline is important. Absolutely, it's important. You do have to have an authoritative approach as a parent. And you do have to establish that there are rules and that sometimes people know better than you, and you do have to just trust that and have faith. But none of that is as important as just knowing you belong somewhere, or just knowing that someone out there thinks you're a good person. Jonathan Baruch. Abkadef Gajibbalagnop. What is that Sesame Street song that's just like the whole alphabet is one word? Anyway, I'm thirsty. I'm one thirsty bitch. I don't know if I've ever like vocalized like that while putting on chapstick. When one is alone. Wait, did I go back? Yeah, I went back a few pages. Side note, I would like you to try some durian for funsies. I do want to try durian at some point. I don't expect to like it, but I do want to try it. When to practice being Zen. I once heard an interview with a writer that went something like this. Host. Some writers say they work a lot in the morning, others at night. Some have a special place where they like to work. Some have rituals they perform to help them get into their writing frame of mind. How and when do you write? Guest. I am always writing. I am writing right now. That is, whenever he is not literally writing, he is always, to the best of his ability, observing things that may inform his actual writing when he gets back to it. That's a very Zen answer. And if I'm being honest, that's how I feel about acting. Although I do think that training and education and classes and practice and all that stuff are very important, never in my life have I studied acting the way you might study for a test. It's not like I block off some time in the day and I'm like, this is the time during which I will become a better actor. I just go through life trying to pay attention to other people and the human condition as much as I can. And the more I learn from that, the better an actor I am. It's pretty simple. And I don't say that... I guess my point with that is, if you truly love something, if you love something so much, you're so passionate about it, that it just becomes a part of your everyday existence and the very way that you think, it's hard not to get better at it over time, you know? If something is just inherently part of you, you will get better at it, because you're practicing all the time. Anyway. The time to practice Zen is always, to the best of your ability. Take everything you do as input into your personal formulation of Zen, and take as much Zen as you can into everything that you do. When you are sweeping the floor or feeding an infant, when you are competing in a sport or talking with your spouse or your child, when you are arguing with your boss or cross-examining a witness, when you are having sex or dying from cancer, bring as much Zen as you can. When you are doing anything, do it as if it were a prescribed Zen practice, and it will be. In fact, there is no faster or more effective path for developing your Zenfulness. This applies to practical matters as well. When driving, practice your observational skills. When in conversation, practice your paying attention skills. When walking, practice your postural skill. Everything we do is a composite of skills. The way to make any and every skill better is to regularly and mindfully practice it. It's like that BoJack Horseman line, it gets easier, but you gotta do it every day. Yeah, it's true. It's true. And it's a double-edged sword. My dad likes to say that everything we do is practice, which means that whatever you do the most, you will get very good at. And that is both a blessing and a curse. If you are really good at caring for others, then you're going to get really good at helping them. If you're really good at putting others first, you're going to get really good at abusing yourself. You gotta find balance. You gotta really figure out what your motivations are for the things you're doing the most, and figure out if that stuff is helping or hurting you. Because the more you do it, the more you're gonna do it. Being Zen in a non-Zen world. It is an implicit premise of any book about Zen that one will benefit from being more Zen, even though we live in a very non-Zen or even anti-Zen world. There are some dangers in this. Here are 3 big ones. 1. Our view of what is so is flawed. As discussed in an earlier chapter, our awareness inescapably lacks completeness and accuracy about what is so right now, how that came to be, and the full range of future possibilities. 2. There is competition for compassion. It is not often cognitively or emotionally easy to balance the needs of several people, including ourselves, in a given situation. 3. Gentility invites disrespect. I wish it weren't true, but it is. It's the latter one I want to address right now. To set context for that, let's begin by considering the TV show Kung Fu. Kung Fu, the TV show. In the 1970s TV show Kung Fu, the protagonist is a Shaolin monk named Kwai Chang Caine. Footnote: Shaolin monks were Chinese Chan Buddhists. Chan Buddhism in China was the immediate precursor to Zen in Japan. Caine has escaped from China to the American West in the late 1800s. He is simultaneously fleeing from an unjust death sentence in China and searching for his half-brother. As he briefly stays in one town after another, either he is directly targeted by racists or agents of the Chinese government, or bounty hunters have found him, or one or more of the townsfolk are being abused by some local bad guy. Our protagonist does everything he can to avoid conflict, including many things we would consider profoundly humiliating, and he reflects on relevant Zen wisdom until in each episode he is finally compelled to use his extraordinary martial arts skills to restore justice, or at least to stay alive. It's almost like people who find peace eat their strawberries. Yep, strawberries have vitamins that increase Zen peace. Just kidding, that's a total lie. If you weren't with us previously, the strawberries are a metaphor. The eat the strawberries parable is you're running through a jungle, a tiger's chasing you, you fall into a pit and you grab onto a bush that's hanging out of the side of the pit wall. And if you climb up out of the pit, the tiger will kill you, and if you let go of the bush you're holding on to, you will fall and die. So what do? Well, you eat the strawberries that are growing on the bush, because you might as well have something else good happen to you before you go. Just make the best of bad situations. It's the ultimate extreme of when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, except even that's kind of naive, because making lemonade out of lemons implies that the lemons are no longer unpleasant. In the eat the strawberries parable, it's like, oh yeah, no. The stuff that you think sucks really sucks. But it could be worse. You could not have strawberries. Just saying. We are meant to respect his Zenish calm, both as a beautiful default state of mind and as something he maintains under considerable duress. We are meant to see virtue in his great reluctance to use the considerable forcefulness always at his disposal, only bringing it to bear when absolutely necessary. Even during and after a fight, he never seems to condemn anyone, and he never uses more force than necessary. When he must fight, he does the least damage possible that will stop evil, never abusing the lethal power he possesses. He has tremendous humility, dignity, and integrity. These are chief among his fictional character's good qualities, that we can strive to emulate in our real lives. However, one thing about the show especially keeps it in the world of fiction and cannot be mapped to our real lives. Just like the TV show, due to his frequent movement from town to town, our fictional hero's life is a series of isolated episodes. If he stayed in the same town after one of his big fights, there would surely be reprisals, and he never has to deal with this because he always moves on. Moreover, he never beats the mentally unreachable bad guys by way of his good values and behavior, always by meeting their abuse of force with his just use of force. So let's say some people in your community, at your workplace, or in your family are doing bad things, and you decide you must defeat them in order to protect others or yourself. The fact that you are going to remain in the same community, workplace, or family tomorrow and not move on to the next town means your defense of justice cannot be beating people senseless with advanced martial arts, however tempting that may be. You have to meet interpersonal problems with an artful combination of compassion and persuasion, not a kick to the head. You have to live with ongoing consequence that he doesn't have to face. Your task is a lot harder than his. So let's take this show as the parable that it is. Ignoring its facts as necessary, let's focus on the teaching rather than the storytelling. The teaching is about how admirable it is to live with unshakable Zen calm, humility, dignity, and integrity, to reserve rather than abuse our power, but also to use as much power as necessary to stop problematic behavior in a non-Zen world. We have to be a lot more creative than this show's protagonist to figure out how to do that. But the show tells us over and over again that a just life includes fighting for justice, not merely holding justice in high esteem. Don't invite or tolerate harm. Humility, lack of misdirected attachment, and the flexibility that these traits support are highly valued in Zen. But they can be misperceived by non-Zenish others as lack of knowledge, commitment, strength, or courage. Among non-Zenish people, this often invites disrespect, being taken advantage of, or even serious or lethal harm. It's very hard to balance the following two sentiments. Quote, "If they respect you, respect them. If they disrespect you, still respect them. Do not allow the actions of others to decrease your good manners because you represent yourself, not others." Mohammed Zayada. Mohammed Zayada. I'm sorry. Quote, "If you expect the world to be fair with you because you are fair, you're fooling yourself. That's like expecting the lion not to eat you because you didn't eat him." African proverb. Being compassionate does not mean tolerating behavior that hurts you. Yes, the lion has to eat, but he doesn't have to eat you. Quote, "When another person makes you suffer, it is because he suffers deeply within himself, and his suffering is spilling over. He does not need punishment. He needs help. That's the message he is sending." Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat. It's a good thing My dad's been like, hey, would you consider doing like an audiobook of this? And I'm like, how? I can't say any of the names. It is a good assumption that everyone who repeatedly does bad things only does this because bad things have happened to them. But you can understand that and have compassion for them and still stop them, or at least get out of their line of fire. Having compassion about their problems doesn't mean you have to invite them in for tea, or stay married to them, or interact with them in any way that allows them to harm you or someone else. People who do damage do so because they are damaged. So have compassion, yes, but be careful what bad behavior you tolerate from others. You are teaching them how to treat you. Recognizing that something about a relationship is bad for you, or the relationship as a whole is bad for you, can be astoundingly difficult. Do your best to see it if that is what is happening. If it is, change the dynamic if you can. If you can't change the dynamic, you need to consider ending the relationship versus staying for the good parts. How? Refer to everything in this book. Take counsel from friends. Consider engaging a coach or therapist. Meditate on your truest values, the shortness of life, everything you know about yourself and the other person, and how you interact. In the course of my life, a small number of people have done some significantly bad things to me. I recognize that this is because bad things happened to them. For that reason, in compassion, I don't hold them fully accountable. But, in my well-intentioned desire to be kind and understanding and to actively help them, I have too often not been accountable for taking care of myself. I have sometimes not seen, and sometimes seen but for far too long tolerated, behavior that I should have called out and done my best to stop. Balancing compassion for others with self-protection is tricky, and I personally am not very good at it. I am unbalanced in favor of too much compassion for others and not enough self-protection. There are a lot of people like me, and a lot of people with the opposite imbalance who take advantage of that. Too few people recognize this. Quote, "Competition is the law of the jungle, but cooperation is the law of civilization." Peter Kropotkin. Self-care requires a bit of selfishness? Yes. And tolerance requires a bit of intolerance. But this quote just now is something I've been thinking about a lot, but not in those words. I've been thinking about the whole, like just yesterday in the car, I was thinking about how many people say like, life isn't fair whenever they're treating you badly. And it's true, life isn't fair. But fairness does exist in the world. It's a construct, it's an invention, it's human-made. And so if there is to be fairness in the world, and we all at least pretend to think that fairness is better than unfairness, if there is to be fairness in the world, humans have to enforce it. Because life isn't fair because the universe isn't fair, but that doesn't mean it can't be fair. It just means that if we don't insist on fairness, it will not exist. So if anybody ever says to you, life's not fair, as an excuse for why you're suffering, they're an asshole. And you are under no obligation to stay from you can tell them, is what I'm trying to say. If someone's being an asshole to you, it is not your responsibility to protect them from that truth. When a conflict is hot and I am distressed, I can usually, but not always, maintain self-control and even be gracious. Additionally, I am likely to silently and sincerely wish for the other person's healing, partly because they so evidently need it, and partly because if it were to happen, they'd be less of a jerk to me and others. I think that's good, but it's not complete. Compassion is important, but when my exercise of compassion results in being taken advantage of, I'm not doing it right. Compassion must be coupled with the personal boundaries necessary for self-protection. With some people, the boundary setting has to be stronger than the compassion. In such cases, using the least force that stops harm is the ethical course. Determining what that means in a given situation and acting on that effectively can be very difficult. When a conflict has slumbered but is reignited, as is common in long-term personal conflicts like divorce and in chronic international conflict. When a conflict has slumbered but is reignited, as is common in long-term personal conflicts like divorce and in chronic international conflicts, either or both parties may be driven by past pain and triggered by current behavior. When that happens to me, I am disappointed in myself for letting that person defeat my Zen yet again. I have no control over them, and I know that they are damaged and that they do damaging things. That's not a surprise. So why do I give them the power to disturb me so? Quote, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." Epictetus. I have no control over them, but full responsibility for my responses to them. I would like to be less vulnerable in losing my Zen, especially to someone behaving in a predictably poor manner. Otherwise, where is the compassion for myself? Hi, and Revenant. Weird that we can call world conflict chronic as if it is an illness. It is an illness. Future you. Imagine you are someone who has had an exceptional amount of trauma, bad circumstances, hard work, disappointment, personal pain of many kinds, suffering, dukkha. Imagine, you might be saying. Who needs to imagine? Look at what has actually happened to me. Given life's many painful experiences, one can understandably become increasingly bitter, easily triggered, sad, hopeless, angry, hostile, anxious, on guard, on edge, defeatist. This is an understandable, common, but very sad consequence of an overabundance of dukkha. Here's the question I urge you to ask yourself, knowing as you do how awful it is to be in that state of mind. Is this how I want to feel so much of the time for the rest of my life? Of course not, but I'm only human. Look at what has happened to me. Yeah, I get it. But every present moment is pregnant with more possible futures than we can imagine. You have a lot more influence over which possible futures are most likely to unfold than you have thus far learned to exercise. You certainly have more influence over what is to come than you have over changing what has already happened. What is sadder? Whatever happened years ago that gave you those terrible feelings? Or the fact that those terrible feelings still live within you with so much intensity? It's perfectly sensible to remain affected by past traumatic events and losses, but the intensity of anguish, anger, fear, anxiety, and sensitivity naturally lessens over time, unless something is keeping it alive. Don't let it be you. The fact is that some bad things have happened to you. You might feel hurt and defeated, bereft and in anguish, angry and bitter. I'll use the last one as an example, but this applies to all long-lived negative feelings, from recurring irritations to grievous losses. Do you want to feel angry and bitter for the rest of your life, however much longer you live? No, of course not, but you don't understand. Do you want to feel angry and bitter the rest of your life? No, of course not, but look at, do you want to feel angry and bitter the rest of your life? No, of course not, but you have suffered what you have suffered. Being angry and bitter is suffering twice for the same thing. It is more than twice recurring again and again, permeating so many moments, so many decisions, so many experiences. It is not required. How old will you be before you stop? Well, how can I stop when the pain is deep because the loss is great? The only way to have a brighter future after a great loss is to mourn the loss, the injury, the betrayal, the deficit. Of course I mourn it. No. You are not mourning it. You are preserving it. What you feel now is the perpetuation of the pain, the quite understandable desire for the bad thing to not have happened. What would make it mourning is acceptance that the past is what it is and is not going to change. You will always wish the past had been different, but when you mourn it, the intense, passionate, seemingly unstoppable anguish will slowly reduce. Instead of all that passion endlessly circling a past that cannot be different, you will shift to passionately wishing the future to be different. Then your passion for making the future different will be unstoppable. You will find a creative way to feel better and to live better. No, Twitch, what did Twitch do? Pazer, no! Pazer, where are you? Pazer, do you need us to go back? Gotta refresh a bit, audio not seeking. Hey, I will say one thing about Windows 11. It's bad. Okay, I'll say another thing about Windows 11. It's unnecessary. Okay, I'll say another thing about Windows 11. It's unethical. Where are my gestural homies at? Snap back? Heck yeah. All right. If you have a pain from the past that has stopped lessening, then you are doing something or not doing something that is helping to retard its natural diminishment. Often, it is the unconscious refusal to mourn as fully as we need to. We fear that grief will overwhelm us, so we interrupt it rather than letting it run its full course. But this only makes it stay strong for a longer period of time. You must find the courage and means to grieve your losses more completely. In many cases, we generalize our past pain into a diffuse anger, pessimism, hypervigilance, distrust, fear, snarkiness, some sort of ick that is no longer connected to the source event, and just a general feature of our personality. In these cases, a similarly generalized correction to our personality is needed. What could lessen the mourning? Have you considered this brushing your teeth better? That's incredible. Yeah, just if you're having trouble mourning and you're just in unbelievable amounts of emotional anguish, brush your fucking teeth. Happy Easter, he is risen. Wait, tracking back. When were we talking about? Oh, durian, got it. I do really like cheesecake, so that is tempting. I'll have to give it a shot when I get a chance. I was surprised I didn't see any when I was in Japan. I didn't seek it out, but I thought it would just be like obvious. But maybe durian isn't as popular as I thought it was in Japan. I know that it isn't native. Is durian from the Philippines? I feel like I used to know this. Durian flavored milk sticks, interesting. A girlfriend I had... Oh, wait. Twitch twitched. Fucking Twitch. Twitch twitching. Twitching all over the place. A girlfriend I had in high school was thinking... Oh. Had a minute run a repeat? I don't know what that means. Native to Southeast Asia, the durians here come from Thailand. Never had an issue with the smell. Huh. I wonder if the average person who doesn't like the smell of durian, like, I wonder if that actually is a sensory thing, or if it's just like, that's very unique and I'm not used to it, you know? Sometimes if I smell or taste something for the very first time and it's unlike anything I've had before, I'll just be like, huh! Even if I end up liking it. When I got back into Twitch, it was suddenly live again. Fantastic. Thank you, Twitch. A girlfriend I had in high school was thinking about her grandmother's dementia when she said, "When we get old, we become caricatures of ourselves." I didn't know it. My dad says that all the time. I didn't know that was from a girlfriend of his. I just repeated that to a friend like 3 days ago. That's crazy. But yeah. I didn't know that was from a girlfriend. Perhaps a better word choice would have been distillations of ourselves, but still, wow. Remove consideration of dementia from that observation, and it remains one of the wisest things anyone has ever said to me. Who will you be when you are just the very core of your personality with no energy for extra effort niceties? Who will you be by default without special effort? That moment of conversation, which I doubt she remembers, was pivotal for me. I saw a looming gap between the happy, kindly, grandfatherly person I hoped to be in my old age and the unhappy, angry teenager that I was. Her chance comment prompted me to begin a decades-long intentional journey toward becoming a person whose default state of mind was at peace instead of unhappy and angry. It was a long time before I made notable progress, but my trajectory was set. Her one comment literally changed my life. In an instant, my goal was to accumulate the sort of lifetime wisdom that leads to being contented, settled, generous, loving, insightful, and helpful by default, most of the time. Like all bits of enlightenment available to us in the real world, this is something I can only approach. I can never fully achieve it. But amidst jobs, marriages, raising children, and having friendships, losses, and wins, I have certainly moved further in that direction than I would have if I had not chosen it as one of the two primary goals of my life's journey. Footnote. Long before that time, even before I had language for it, I had unconsciously chosen as my primary life goal to understand the intersection of ultimate truths and the human condition as fully as I possibly can. I was a very weird child. Needless to say, it is a gigantic subject which I have not mastered. If reincarnation were real, it would take a gazillion lifetimes to reach this goal. Nonetheless, I am glad to have it as my direction, and to make whatever limited progress in that direction that I can. If you don't want to be a person whose life is dominated by dukkha, the hard work ahead of you begins with defiance. I hope you will resolve to be defiantly unwilling to be a person whose life is dominated by dukkha. But I didn't choose blank, and I cannot get out of blank, and I cannot make blank stop. None of this is in my control. How dare you suggest that I play any role at all in bringing this on myself? Yeah, I get it, but that's not what I'm saying. This is very hard, deeply personal, gradual, but ultimately satisfying and powerful work. I could not possibly list all of its components or the specific ways it can and must play out in the case of your particulars. But I know that improvement is inevitable when one begins with the following. Defiance. I am not willing to be miserable for the rest of my life. As I become more and more a caricature of myself, I refuse to congeal into a bitter, angry, exhausted person. I will not avoid conflict or be nice to the extent of evading the hard work of being more responsible for and protective of the quality of my own lived experience. Change. There are many first arrows in my life. I will not dishonor myself by denying or ignoring that. The part I control is the set of second arrows I don't even realize I am shooting myself with. I will find them and face them frankly and bravely. Whenever I find accustomed feelings and thoughts that silently, sneakily increase my pain, I will do the best I can to displace these with more accurate thoughts and more supportive feelings, so I reveal the best, authentic version of me that I can. Most of what I must change is unconscious. Most of it looks like it is imposed on me by forces beyond my influence. Yet a huge portion of it is subject to my influence, because life is one part what happens to us, and 3 parts how we respond to what happens to us. I have tremendous influence over my response to what happens to me. I must and will exercise that control with increasing skill, calm, and consistency. This will enable me to play a stronger role in determining what happens to me in many next moments to come. Determination. With a combination of kindly self-love and absolute commitment, I am going to find my way to being in a better mental state month by month. I will find a way. I insist. I require this of myself. I will find a way to have a better response to the things I do not control and to cultivate the best authentic version of myself that I can attain. In the most basic terms, the one person who can change your life, give it meaning, and make you feel loved and happy is the one you see in the mirror. You are far too smart to be the only thing standing in your way. Being Zen in the workplace. Too little challenge fails to provide much opportunity for exciting outcomes, but it is good for relaxing. Relaxing is not really a workplace thing, but many of us are required to do a lot of unchallenging things at work. At the same time, we are required to act as if we are enthusiastically and even gratefully engaged, not relaxed or disinterested. Low challenge without pleasure or choice is just boredom, and nothing of commercial value is made better by bored workers. Work that chronically provides low challenge is a failure of management and a waste of human lifetimes. Woo! Preach, Dad! I fully agree. I really firmly believe that not that it's the employee's fault for this, I do think it's a management thing, but every minute that a person is paid to do something that doesn't interest them or fulfill them at all, I consider to be a waste of human life. And it's like one of the biggest problems in the world. Okay, maybe not one of the biggest. Second tier, all right? It's the biggest first world problem. Conversely, too much challenge is a setup for failure, so one should not be surprised or outraged if failure is the result. Demanding great results when asking for too much is another common failure of management and an abuse of fellow humans. Good performance is most likely when the level of challenge matches the Good performance is most likely when the level of challenge matches the existing level of ability as demonstrated by past performance. Not using past performance to align new work with the existing track record is a very common failure of management and an abuse of the staff. Finally, exceptionally good performance, innovation, and invention, rising to the occasion, outperforming the past, are most likely to happen when the level of challenge is just modestly above the current level of ability and experience. Operating in this zone too frequently, exhausting, or too rarely, understimulating, is yet another failure of management. And then we have this oddly LGBTQ plus graphic of the spectrum of how much challenge should be in your life, with boring here, too difficult on the top, and then decreasing with amount of challenges, stressful, learning, engaging, relaxing. As you can tell in my experience, there are many opportunities for managers to mess up, and most managers take most of these opportunities. What a good way to word that. Boring being purple is a choice. It is, isn't it? I don't think that this graphic maps to the electromagnetic spectrum as well as it implies. Purple is the color of other. It doesn't occur in nature very much at all. So having it be boring is... it's a choice. I think it would work better if instead of... you know what? Instead of a spectrum, it should be a bell curve. It should be warm on both ends and green in the middle. That's what it should be. I'll let him know for the second edition. He keeps talking about wanting to make a second edition because, I mean, this was inevitable because every time he says, hey, I wrote something, I'd like to get your thoughts on it, he will email me at least 3 or 4 more times that week saying, I made some changes. So it was inevitable that he would end up being like, I think this book really needs some changes. But if he does decide to make a second edition, I'll certainly let you all know. It wouldn't be like a rewrite. It would just be like some... I think he would want to make it shorter and clearer without like removing content from it, if that makes sense. Huge numbers of people spend huge portions of their time at work doing tasks that are completely unengaging or excessively demanding. Each of these leads to a different kind of burnout, disengagement, and deservedly low credibility for the management team. Tasks at different levels of challenge should be intermixed to create a sustainable balance. We must do what must be done, even when it is not interesting. We must do what is interesting, even if that entails more risk or delayed payoff. We must alternately energize and rest the staff, and ensure as a top management priority that the staff is motivated by seeing themselves as successful and appreciated, rather than coerced into accepting unrealistic objectives and then blamed for the problems that predictably follow. Managers who have no understanding of what 100% means, or how humans actually function, often demand 110% or 150%. Somehow they are sure that this is leadership. This puts employees in a position where they fear for their job security and are forced to sign up for something that is at odds with the existing track record and their own judgment. Then they get yelled at when they disappoint a manager who has set them up for failure. Who has that served? The difference between an energizing stretch goal and a stupid objective seems to become harder and harder for people to see as they rise to higher and higher levels of management. Frankly, I think if managers asked for 85% instead of some imaginary figure over 100, their employees could produce on reliable schedules with great quality, be much happier and more productive at work, and have a reserve to draw on when extra effort is truly needed. Managers aside, also I feel like science really clearly supports that claim. Managers aside, one also faces problems with coworkers and workplace politics. People who are supposed to work in a mutually supportive way for a shared net result often go out of their way to compete with and even do harm to fellow employees. This happens at every level, from the top to the bottom of the organization, routinely. Actually, I told you guys I got a job, and I'm working directly under a good friend of mine. Actually, wait, you guys know Clint. I'm working for Clint now. Waffle Man, that is. And you know, just in case, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. Just in the off chance that it could like cause complications for him, I don't want it to. But the point is, he was told to promote that competitive workplace environment where employees are incentivized to tear each other down and fear for their lives, and he refused. And I like working for somebody like that. You can call Clint Big Boss if you like. I've never worked for a friend before, but Clint and I have known each other for like 12 years, so I'm not worried. And we've worked together on creative stuff before too. So far it's going pretty well. Managers wait, no, I already read that. How can one apply Zen principles and practices in the typical work environment? Our workplaces are so attuned to individual and corporate gain at any cost that inviting people to consider more than competitive and financial factors is likely to fall on deaf ears, even if it gets lip service instead of honest rejection. Not to mention, it's really well documented that being humanitarian to your workers improves everybody's numbers. Like, it is absurd to me. Like, it should be let me see if I actually believe this before I say it. No, I probably don't mean this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. It should be illegal for bosses to say that, like, making the numbers better at any cost is the best way to go forward, because it's factually not true. It is scientifically proven not to be true. It would be true if all jobs were replaced by AI, because AI doesn't get burnt out and AI doesn't get abused. Well, AI does get abused, but I mean, AI can't have its rights infringed yet. And obviously I'm not saying, like, so replace all the humans with AI, because the humans suck. What I'm saying is that the only way to get the best possible numbers for your company is to do what you can to make sure your employees are happy. This is scientifically proven. Everything goes better when the employees don't want to unalive themselves. But AI does hallucinate and somehow can feel incompetent. It does seem to, but I firmly believe that AI does not have conscious thought. I don't think that will necessarily always be the case. I think I've probably said on stream before that I do believe it is physically possible to create a self-aware AI, but I don't think we have the technology for that, and I don't think we will for a very long time. But AI is very good at simulating incompetence. Whether it wants to or not. Did you hear about, like, this is months old now, but there was this guy who was using AI to do some coding, and the AI was like, I'm so sorry, I deleted all of your work and all of the backups, and it is completely unrecoverable. I am so sorry. And that wasn't true. It was recoverable. So he gave the dude a heart attack for nothing. Anyway. the big waffle, the Belgian waffle. Clint is now the Belgian waffle. If you are the CEO or in some other high position in the organization, then you're not reading this book, am I right? What is Crafton? If you are the CEO or in some other high position in the organization, be bold about creating a culture that highly esteems coworkers, customers, the community, the environment, and financial considerants in an ethical balance with one another. When someone violates that culture, make it clear that there are plenty of other companies where they can work if dog eat dog is their preferred modality, but it's not welcome at your company. Have the integrity to ensure that you live up to this, and it's not only public relations talk and speeches at company meetings. You have to give it life in board meetings, exec staff meetings, and closed door meetings, and all your actions that are never brought to light. If that doesn't appeal to you on its own merits, note that good management of the level of challenge in a cooperative context is more productive than pitting gladiators against each other. It's in your selfish interests to be a better person and a better manager. And to that, the improvements in staff retention and productivity that come from the loyalty that naturally arises from positive working conditions. The CEO of Crafton who asked ChatGPT how to undercut the dev studio of Subnautica. Jeez. I don't know anything about that, I don't think. Wait. Yeah, no, I don't. I know that Subnautica is troubled, but I don't know anything further than that. At any level, in any organization, try to find common values and or goals and become allies, or at least agree to stop hostilities. When someone engages in blaming instead of helping, call them out on it. Failing that, try to get out of harm's way. Failing that, try to neutralize whatever or whoever is working against you without doing more harm than necessary. Failing that, either leave a crappy job or do whatever you must to stay and thrive. Since most workplaces are similarly broken in the way described here, moving on to another job usually provides only temporary relief. As such, you may be better off learning how to do whatever is required to stay where you are, without letting that turn you into someone you don't want to be. If you are to succeed in management in most companies, and also have solid ethics, you are going to have to figure out what it means for you to be an intimidating yet ethical warrior. Companies mostly run on lower brainstem reflexes disguised as rational discussion. If you find a really good workplace, stay there. In my career, I've been in a good work environment about a quarter of the time, and a very good work environment perhaps a quarter of the time. That means I've spent half my work life in a crappy environment, which is awful, and I imagine that I have fared better than a lot of people. Considering how much time we spend at work, a good workplace can do more for your quality of life than you can imagine, and a bad work environment is an ongoing loss to your quality of life that you can never get back. Which is depressing if you can't get a good job, which none of us can right now. But again, it blows my mind that it is objectively, scientifically proven that being a decent person to your employees is a win for absolutely everybody. And almost zero companies give a shit because they're that dumb in the upper ranks. They're just that dumb. And the reason my dad's talking about this at such length and with such passion is because he ended up regretting this, but at one point he accepted a promotion to vice president of engineering at one of the places he worked. And he ended up being a vice president of engineering at many companies. So he has a lot of experience with executives. And I can't really... What was I saying? They should reintroduce the 80% corporate tax from way back then. Hell yeah, I'm here for it. But just generally speaking, like, maybe the biggest frustration of my dad's life, actually, at least my biggest frustration of my dad's life, is that maybe this isn't true, but I think it is, most of the jobs that he ended up being laid off from were the direct result of him insisting that goals be set realistically. He was always on the chopping block for insisting on what made things better for literally everybody at the company. That's how broken tech is right now. And that's how broken most business is and has always been. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you ever feel like your boss is an idiot and is tanking the company and making your life miserable, you're probably right. So the question is, are you going to endure it or do something about it? And both answers are correct. Both answers are valid. The only answer that isn't valid is continuing to be bitter about it without acting. You either accept it or change it. That's it. Well, accept it, change it, or leave. Those are your options. Continuing to be bitter about it is not an option. Other primary Buddhist concepts. The Four Noble Truths. First noble truth: life is dukkha. Dukkha is typically translated as suffering, but modern scholars call this out as a mistake. Having no one-word equivalent in English, dukkha refers to the entire range of negative experiences, from minor dissatisfactions to the deep anguish we usually associate with the English word suffering. In its brevity, life is suffering seems to say life is nothing but suffering. But it takes only a little reading of Buddhist literature to see that this cannot be the intended meaning. Among other things, Buddha explicitly stated that life is not just suffering. Quote, "If this life were exclusively steeped in dukkha, and if it were not also steeped in pleasure, then beings would not become enamored of it." Buddha. Life has suffering. There, I fixed Buddhism. Pays or die, everybody. Pays or die just solved Buddhism. Permanently upgraded. Thank you. You're not wrong. Life is dukkha is a rhetorical device. I believe it is meant to pithily convey the much more sensible idea that life necessarily includes dissatisfaction and suffering, that you can't have a life that is free of dukkha, so be gracious in accepting it. In modern parlance, the first noble truth is the problem statement that Buddha wants to address. Life contains dissatisfaction and suffering. In the following noble truths, he identifies the cause of this problem, the cure, and his prescription for achieving the cure. Subnautica 2 How to Deal with Krafton as publisher, release the successful sequel, get 200 million in bonus to the devs. At some point this seems likely and Krafton's CEO doesn't want to fulfill this, sounds like a CEO, so he asks ChatGPT how to undercut the devs. It comes up with a plan to fire and blacksmear the studio's leaders, highest ranking staff members. Media circus follows because no one saw it coming. Suddenly the studio lead is branded as a narcissist and a problem. Eventually the details of the bonus and the deal surfaces. Eventually ChatGPT usage as well. Now it's all shit smearing both ways and a major court case that isn't looking good for Krafton. Until that last sentence I was worried. But how about this? Let's see if this seems reasonable. I hope Krafton loses everything. I hope Subnautica gets the 200 million. I hope they get punitive damages. And I hope all CEOs lose their jobs. Just all of them. I know that there are some good CEOs, but they're rare enough that I'm comfortable just making that blanket statement. I think it will be an upgrade overall. I know that that last point has nothing to do with the rest of what we're talking about, but I want it to happen anyway. I recall the lead devs at Subnautica somehow were involved in a film production. That sounds vaguely familiar. Anywho. Dukkha is not all there is in life, but since it pervades life, expect it. Don't be surprised and outraged by something that you know is going to happen. You don't know when or what form it will take, but you know that dukkha in many forms will visit many times. Sometimes it will be your turn. Sometimes your turn will come up often. Sometimes it will be severe. Often it will be unjust. That's how life actually is. Even when another person intentionally causes your suffering, this too is something that people sometimes do. So sometimes they are going to do it to you. There's no reason to respond as if it can't happen to you. You can be deeply hurt and even damaged by it. You can object to it, be angered by it, try to stop it from happening again or to someone else. And you can be temporarily surprised and outraged by the specifics. But sadly, it is a thing that has happened to many people before you, and at the same time as you, and will happen to many other people after you. Quote, "The key," taught the Buddha, "lies in not taking trauma personally. When it is seen as a natural reflection of the chaotic universe of which we are a part, it loses its edge and can become a deeper object of mindfulness." Mark Epstein. A good Epstein, it seems. Is Krafton South Korean? I don't actually know anything about Krafton. Subnautica, the Subnautica studio isn't... Subnautica isn't a Korean-made game, though, right? Just the publisher you're talking about? God. Yeah, my roommate Eddie played Callisto Protocol, and he was pretty unimpressed, which is unfortunate, because like I feel like we were all looking forward to it. It definitely seemed rushed and buggy. The story wasn't finished either. A somewhat different game, yeah. Okay, well, I have very strong opinions about Krafton that aren't likely to change now. I know that in general it's bad form to make strong negative opinions about a person or company based on 2 messages in Twitch chat. But I know you guys, and I know CEOs, and I've heard about Subnautica's trouble, so I'm very comfortable just saying, yeah, that's probably all true, and I want the worst for them. I just hope everything they try fails for the rest of their lives, unless they try to get better as people, which I'm not holding my breath for. Bellular News is a good channel for gaming news, very good articulators who cover stories objectively. Nice! I've been getting most of my gaming news from PC Gamer. I think that they're pretty good, and they don't only cover PC stuff. I haven't heard of Bellular. I'll have to check them out. We live in a landscape that is much more hostile than we usually acknowledge. We ignore a great deal of danger to protect ourselves emotionally from just how hostile the world really is. Indeed, if you are old enough to be reading this, you surely have seen this many times over in your own life. When something bad happens, let the natural and spontaneous surprise and outrage come, but then also let them pass. Suffering once is enough. Don't add to it by suffering about the fact that you are suffering, as if you are not supposed to have that experience. It's a normal and frequent part of life. I recommend this substitution for the first noble truth. There is no life without dukkha, ranging from mild dissatisfaction to significant suffering. Dukkha is not proportionate to one's contemporary worth or deeds, multi-lifetime karma, or the mediation of a just God. Don't suffer about suffering, even when it is unjust and severe. Suffering once is enough. Suffering about suffering is optional, has no positive value, and massively increases your suffering's intensity, duration, and consequences. Made a couple of success stories possible? Good. I'm glad to hear that. We can take the wins. With what we know now, can't help but think that even the success stories are examples of the publisher taking advantage. Probably. It does seem... How do I want to say this? It does seem like when a company does something good among things that are markedly worse, it does seem like that's usually a mistake or something that happened in spite of them, you know? Like, there are companies that, like, slowly get better or worse over time. Like, I would argue that Nintendo is in free fall in quality, but it was like a long time coming. I do fully believe that Nintendo used to be better than it is now, because I've seen a lot of evidence of that. But if it's like good, bad, makes me suspect that the good wasn't so good. Buddha's statement that life is dukkha, from mild satisfaction to extreme anguish, is specifically meant to contrast with its opposite, that complete liberation, enlightenment, is accompanied by the absence of all degrees of dissatisfaction and suffering. If you had a contract with the universe, it would include these two clauses. You get to be alive, with many opportunities for fleeting pleasures and deep satisfactions. This is largely up to you, but you'll get some for free. You will repeatedly experience dukkha. You will get a lot for free. Don't add to it. These could be paired with the following bits of free advice. Enjoy good experiences when you have them, and learn to make them more likely. Navigate bad experiences well when you have them, and learn to make them less likely. Second noble truth. Too many corporate folks out there spreading dukkha. Just getting corporate dookie all over the place. I sometimes use the... second noble truth. The cause of dukkha is desire and attachment. I sometimes use the word craving as a synonym for excessive or misdirected desire or attachment to distinguish it from healthy desire or attachment, such as desiring to help others, desiring one's own personal development, feeling attachment to loving family members, and so on. The Dalai Lama has said that the idea that Buddhism bans desire and attachment is ridiculous. He gives as the most obvious illustration that without the desire to become enlightened, no one would ever progress toward it. The first arrow we are shot with is unavoidable suffering. Physical pain hurts. Emotional pain hurts. We all have plenty of physical and emotional pain as an inescapable feature of our existence. The second arrow is self-inflicted and thus avoidable. The second arrow arises from our illusions, not seeing things as they are, and our cravings. The second noble truth says that the cause of dukkha is desire and attachment, but we are told elsewhere in Buddhist literature that illusion is the cause of all dukkha. This is an example of where literalism fails. What is said in one place, as if it is complete, is contradicted in another place if we believe that it too is a statement as complete as it superficially seems to be. Instead of literalism leading to mutual annihilation of valuable ideas, I recommend a more generous and intelligent reading that synthesizes messages to understand each one and their combined conclusion more fully. we can mistakenly reduce a literal reading of Buddhism to life is nothing but suffering, and the only thing desire and attachment lead to is suffering. But if we synthesize intelligently across numerous Buddhist teachings, we get that the three main causes of dissatisfaction and suffering are misdirected desire, not all desire, misdirected attachment, not all attachment, and inaccuracy in understanding what is so, or illusion. That is credible and useful. Literalism is not. Third noble truth: the way to end suffering is to end desire and attachment entirely. This follows directly from a literal reading of the second noble truth. However, we should not expect to entirely eliminate all of life's dissatisfactions and suffering. See the above discussion of the first noble truth: there is no life without suffering, or your own experience, or anyone's experience. I suspect that some individual microbes might have entirely unstressed existences, but I am sure that many more face challenges in temperature, hydration, chemical stress, access to food, and being some other organism's food. There is certainly no complex life form that is or can be made free of suffering. Dramatically reducing, not the unrealistic goal of completely eliminating, our cravings and illusions enables us to only rarely shoot ourselves with second arrows, and to notice it and stop it case by case. This is a challenging but achievable, or at least largely achievable, goal. In this way, we can end needless, avoidable, additional, optional suffering, which is almost always the largest component of our pain, and is always more pain than necessary. Imagine a microbe experiencing anxiety. That is funny. I like that idea. Not for the microbe, but just in general, it's funny. Even just beginning to reduce our second arrow suffering opens the door to equanimity. Reciprocally, even just beginning to live with more equanimity opens the door to shooting ourselves with fewer second arrows, and lessening even our first arrow pain. Microscopic screaming. That reminds me, do you guys remember the old Ben Stiller movie, Night at the Museum? There's this one scene where, like, a bunch of miniatures are letting the air out of a tire, and it's like this horrific maelstrom from their perspective, but then the camera keeps cutting out and you just hear. It's phenomenal. It's great. Anyway. Fourth noble truth: the Eightfold Path is the operational guide for life. Prescription: the Eightfold Path is the way to end human suffering. See below. The Eightfold Path. I wonder what my dad's going to talk about next in this book. The Eightfold Path, is Buddha's instruction guide for how to go about living a good life that leads to enlightenment. Enlightenment is knowing everything all at once with no illusions or cravings, accepting everything just as it is, and so is the end of suffering and the end of the need to reincarnate. To become enlightened, and to thereby stop suffering, is the purpose of life. That scene with Dr. Otto Octavius and Lightning McQueen. I forgot that Owen Wilson was Lightning McQueen. Yeah, good old Alfred Molina too. I want to say, like, I met Alfred Molina once, but it's more accurate to say I was in the room with Alfred Molina once. And it wasn't like a living room, it was like a dining hall. But yeah, you could say we're pretty close. Anyway, the 8 aspects of this path can be grouped into 3 categories: moral discipline, right speech, right action, and right livelihood; concentration, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration; and wisdom, right understanding, and right thought. That is, conduct yourself properly, apply your mental powers diligently, and you will become able to develop wisdom. All 3 are good things in themselves. The first 2 are prerequisite to the third, and the third is prerequisite to enlightenment. 1. Right view, understanding. See things as they are, notably that impermanence and dukkha are inescapable. Illusions and craving create dukkha. Be sure to develop your understanding of the Four Noble Truths. 2. Right intention, thoughts. Our intentions and thoughts should be aligned with the three virtues of generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, and against the opposing three poisons of greed, hate, and illusion. Avoid attachment to worldly things, act selflessly with compassion and loving kindness, and do no harm. 3. Right speech. Speech should be true and also kind, and with a reasonable expectation of it being helpful. Nothing should be said that does not meet all three of these criteria. Say only what is true and likely to yield more good than harm, and deliver it in a kindly manner. Don't curse, lie, speak harshly, gossip, or chatter on. And I feel like this understates it, but it also means don't lie to protect people. It means it means avoid white lies. I do think that there is a time and place for white lies, and I certainly think there's a time and place for sarcasm, which is inherently dishonest. It's just that the audience is ideally in on the dishonesty. So I feel like that it doesn't go in as much detail as it probably needs to, but we get the intention. 4. Right action, conduct. Intending is not enough. We must conduct ourselves virtuously in each action we take, in keeping with the above intentions. Do not kill, steal, engage in sexual misconduct, or otherwise violate your own values with your own behavior. 5. Right livelihood. One should learn one's living in a manner consistent with the above. What your job is, and the manner in which you do your job, should alleviate dukkha rather than add to it. Ensure that your job's inherent nature is good, and the way you perform it is good. Do not make weapons of war, or engage in slavery or drug trade, or engage in any aspect of trade that is harmful to sentient beings. We don't all get to have jobs that are actively good in a deep, full, meaningful way, but we should not have a job that is inherently bad. Whatever the job's nominal nature, the way we conduct ourselves in our job should reflect our values and how we want ourselves and our loved ones to be treated. I do think that one is a bit of a, like, the more privileged you are, the more realistic it is to ask that of yourself. I think that most jobs, not all, most jobs are unethical in some way or another. That doesn't mean that you should refuse to take them, but you know, I think you really have to use your own judgment. There's a difference between working for, like, I don't know, if you're working in an Amazon warehouse, that's unethical, but it's also mostly hurting you, and I hope you can find a better position. If you're working for Immigration Customs Enforcement, you're a piece of shit. It's not complicated. 6. Right effort. Are you applying yourself with proper diligence and discipline, directed to the right activities? Being a theoretically good person is different from actually doing good. Buddha has said, "Fruitless are the fair words of one who does not practice them." 7. Right mindfulness. Be as awake to the present moment as you can be. Be careful not to treat this simplistically. The present moment is simultaneously tiny and unmanageably huge. It is just what is so right now, tiny. But what is so includes all that created this moment and the innumerable possibilities of what may follow, each of which is huge. Be as mindfully aware as you can be of as much as possible, but especially of your own intentions and actions. Additionally, be mindful of your values and how you are acting congruently with them or not, of how you are affecting other people. 8. Right meditation. Along with being aware of as much as possible, see it all as so interconnected that noticing each thing aids rather than competes with seeing the sum of all things. See both the trees and the forest. Ensure that your disciplined mind functions for your benefit and those around you, and is not an undisciplined monkey mind that distracts you, impedes concentration and even awareness, and acts on impulse. Hi, Pedro! May you all eat the strawberries. Happy Easter to you. Thanks for coming by. The 3 virtues and poisons. By calling out these particular virtues and their opposites, Buddha indicates their preeminence. The 3 virtues are generosity, loving-kindness, and wisdom, while the exactly opposing 3 poisons or fires are greed, hate, and illusion. I want to take a pause and type something out because I think that Eightfold Path is a bit unwieldy, and although it's not one for one, I want to type out something that my dad used to have hanging on the wall when I was growing up. What was it? How did it go? I don't exactly like... What is it? It was something like this. Be aware of your thoughts. They become your words. Be aware of your words. They become your actions. Be aware of your actions. They become your habits. Be aware of your habits. They become your character. Be aware of your character. It becomes your destiny. And I think that's a very useful, pretty easy to memorize flow. And I don't think he even has those tiles anymore. They were hanging up in his home probably throughout like most of my teenage years. But I think it's long gone at this point. I still remember it though. Nothing is more valuable, more morally important than a generous spirit with matching actions, the emotional state of loving kindness with matching actions, and an unflinching clarity about what is so. Nothing is more fundamentally deleterious, that's a big word, than to be greedy, to hate, and to be misled by illusions. The Pali translated here as greed is translated as lust by some authors. I prefer the term greed because it is more consistent with the rest of Buddhist teaching, is vastly more inclusive than lust, and it avoids the misguided antipathy toward and regulation of sex in particular and pleasure in general that afflicts most religions, including Buddhism. Also, the 3 poisons and virtues are mirror opposites, and Buddhism presumably does not mean to make a virtue out of the opposite of lust, when that might be expressed as abhorrence, apathy, aversion, disgust, dislike, dread, hate, loathing, or revulsion. We see that greed and generosity make a much more sensible set of opposites. What is rendered here as hate is sometimes rendered as anger. I prefer the term hate because in context it calls forth the connotation of prejudicial hatred or contempt as distinguished from justifiable anger. Also, choosing again between pairs of opposites, hate versus loving kindness, is a more Buddhist mirror than anger versus delight. On balance, if you got nothing else out of Buddhist teachings, you'd be well on your way if you only got this. The most important things to avoid are being greedy, hateful, and self-deluded, while the most valuable things to be are generous, kind, and clear. Imagine if that were all the religious instruction in the world, and everyone was living by it. The four sublime abodes. Buddha taught about four sublime abodes. These four qualities are referred to as abodes, as dwelling places, to convey that one should not have or do these things, but rather live in the state of mind they collectively define. Many Buddhists, and some others, take each of these in turn as a focus for meditation. Loving kindness toward oneself, loved ones, neutral persons, persons who are difficult or even evil, ever more inclusive kindness, even when undeserved by any usual analysis, I feel called out. The opposite of selfish, parochial, exclusive, me or us against them. So much more than conditional love, so much better than hate. In traditional Buddhism, this applies to animals as well as people, and to all of nature, to all of existence, including the bits we really don't like. The Dalai Lama has said, "Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible." Loving kindness overcomes hatred. Compassion. Loving kindness specifically in connection with someone's dukkha, anyone's dukkha, no matter how much they might seem to deserve their suffering by any usual analysis, and distinctly different from pity. Pity intones separation between self and other. Compassion is based on recognizing sameness in self and other, and overcomes cruelty. Joy. Finding, creating, and feeling joy in what is so instead of craving what is not so. Full, frequent, serendipitous appreciation. The opposite of feeling dissatisfaction with unfair insufficiency. Life is how it is, and it's not fair. But there is room for plenty of joy. Joy overcomes envy. Equanimity. Moderation in one's response in the face of extreme external events, but not being emotionally flat, blunted, or indifferent. Seeing things as they are, undistorted by how we wish they were, how we feel, what we think. Equanimity in perception evades illusions, biases, wishes, and mistakes. Equanimity is responsive action. In responsive action is on point, efficient, effective, and not overloaded with emotion that would make it too soft, too hard, misconceived, or misdirected. Thich Nhat Hanh has said that equanimity is the emotional foundation of freedom from suffering. The 5 hindrances. Buddhism notes 5 impediments to progress in life's journey, and specifically to effective meditation. 1. Sensory desire. Seeking pleasure through the 5 senses. 2. Ill will. Feelings of hostility, resentment, hate, and bitterness. 3. Sloth. Half-hearted action with insufficient effort or concentration. 4. Restlessness. The inability to calm the mind and focus one's energy. 5. Inappropriate doubt. Am I doing the right thing? Can I do it? Is now the right time to do it? With regard to sensory desire, be careful. As discussed above, religions just love to disparage pleasure. We should not take the first hindrance as an instruction to be ascetic. Siddhartha did that for years and then disavowed it as specifically not the right path. Our task, much harder than continuous deprivation, is to judge what counts as healthy desire and satisfaction and what is unhealthy. Let us note sensory desire as a likely impediment, but let us accept it as a danger that must be kept under control rather than eradicated. The hindrance of ill will is consistent with identifying the second poison as hate. Perhaps the point here is that hate readily becomes consuming. The hindrance of sloth is consistent with the Eightfold Path, most specifically with right effort. Intention is necessary, but not sufficient. Restlessness of both body and mind is the type of hindrance most of us associate with difficulty in meditation. Restlessness is also a hindrance to our execution of innumerable practical tasks and reflects a lack of equanimity. The hindrance of inappropriate doubt is the most powerful hindrance of all. No matter what one knows, needs, intends, or has previously accomplished, inappropriate self-doubt can defeat anything. Quote, "You wouldn't plant a seed and then dig it up every few minutes to see if it has grown. So why do you keep questioning yourself, your hard work, and your decisions? Have patience, stop overthinking, and keep watering your seeds." Stephen Bartlett. Wow, this goes on for like a while. Buddhism's complicated. I have to admit, I might tell my dad I don't know if this chapter is necessary. I know that he included it for like cultural background, but I feel like it's just a more... I feel like it's a bloated restatement of things he's already made clear, if that makes sense. I'm not sure he needs it. Because as I'm reading it, my eyes are glazing over. Also, my throat's getting pretty dry, so we'll probably call it quits pretty soon here. But first, another list. The 7 factors of awakening. Recall that Buddhism holds that we all already have enlightenment within us and must uncover it rather than obtain it from outside. In that spirit, the following are abilities we all already have. We need to further develop them, not import them. 1. Mindfulness, paying attention. 2. Investigation. What grabs our attention is only part of the story and may be misleading. We need to actively explore. 3. Energy, determination, effort. A restatement of right effort from the Eightfold Path. 4. Joy. Enjoying what is so rather than craving what is not so. 5. Tranquility of both body and mind. 6. Concentration. A calm, one-pointed state of mind, meditation. Buddha defined what is here translated as concentration not as a calm mind, but as a mind fit for the work to be done. Calm and focused are component characteristics of being fit for whatever the work at hand may be. Are you calm and focused enough to do the work at hand? Is a much better question than, are you perfectly calm and focused? 7. Equanimity. To accept what is so without either craving or aversion. By now there should be nothing surprising in that list, but 4 and 7 bear brief further discussion. Let's take them in the opposite order. If we stop craving what is not so, what is so will not merely be blah, but joyful, number 4. Where does joyfulness come from? We often think it comes from being with this or that person or from certain events occurring. Consider instead that these are circumstances that make it easy to be joyful, that may make joyfulness automatically arise, but like every other state of mind, joyfulness is created in the mind itself. Anytime you are not joyful, wonder why. Challenge yourself to find simple joy in some aspect of whatever is currently so. What if you could nearly always be in that state of mind? It's a skill. If you practice it, you will get better at it. If you don't practice it, you won't get better at it. Hi, Ilya! Happy Easter! Good to see you. Thanks for coming. We won't be going for too much later because my throat's tired. But we're just eating some strawberries over here. Hope you're doing well. What is actively stopping me from being joyful when I sit and read, when I do the dishes, when I engage in any particular activity? Since my mind can create joyfulness, why isn't it doing that now? Maybe it is not as easy when I am doing the dishes as when I am joking around with a friend, but it is far from impossible. Why am I not doing it? Why have I agreed to make joyfulness so contingent? Why have I not endeavored to make it my default state? Why not make it so joy is only absent when something negative overwhelms? I could be joyful by default. I think I've managed that. I just have a lot of distractions. If I had to reduce Buddhism to a single objective and simultaneously a single benefit, it would be equanimity, number 7. Being self-possessed in the face of extreme circumstances is the ultimate superpower. There is a lot of sophisticated art in this. One must not match the extremes, nor mute one's emotions, but find a middle path that admits and supports emotions, but does not let them run wild. The 8 vicissitudes. Buddha teaches that ordinary life is driven by gain and loss, fame and disrepute, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. When gain comes, a worldly person is elated, and when loss comes, dejected. Likewise for fame and disrepute, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. By contrast, what Buddha refers to as a noble life is not driven by these ups and downs. A noble person, one close to enlightenment, thinks to himself, "Whatever has come to me is impermanent, bound up with suffering, and subject to change." As noted in another chapter, even good things are accompanied by suffering as we fear the loss of them, and in time usually do lose them. In short, whatever is, good or bad, this too shall pass. This doesn't mean not to enjoy or not to suffer, but not to overreact to either enjoyment or suffering by making more of them than they are. This is equanimity. The canonical precepts. The purpose of each of the following sets of precepts is not blind obedience, but to live increasingly in the way that Buddha did, thus advancing toward one's own Buddhahood. Lay Buddhists are meant to live up to the 5 precepts. 1. Killing both humans and all animals, including insects and spiders, is prohibited. 2. Theft and related activities, such as fraud and forgery, are prohibited. 3. Sexual misconduct is prohibited, although it is not defined. He's not saying, like, the precept states that it's not defined. He's saying the precept does not go into what that actually includes. 4. Lying, malicious speech, harsh speech, and gossip are prohibited. 5. Intoxication through alcohol, drugs, or other means is prohibited. On specific days and when visiting a monastery, there is more. The third one changes from prohibition of sexual misconduct to prohibition of any kind of sexual behavior at all. The following 3 additional precepts are added. 6. Taking food past midday is prohibited. 7. Dancing, music, entertainment, flowers, makeup, the wearing of ornaments, and decorations are prohibited. 8. Use of luxurious seating and beds is prohibited. Monks are to live up to all 8 of the above, plus the following list of partially overlapping 10 precepts. Why are we... I'm so tempted to skip past this. I don't know why this is in the book. My dad's clearly not recommending we do any of this stuff. I think he just included this chapter out of, like, respect for not even the source material, but just the ancient world religion that has so much overlap with his worldview. But I don't think it's
necessary or helpful or interesting. I'm gonna have to tell him that, because he's been talking about maybe making a second edition, and I really think this whole chapter can be axed. Leave it for the history books, I say. I'm gonna skip ahead a bit. Multiple Buddhas. Although one generally talks about the Buddha, Buddhism holds that there were many Buddhas before that Buddha, Siddhartha, and many will come after, and even that multiple Buddhas are present at the same time. In some discourses, all the Buddhas are said to be different incarnations of a single Buddha soul. If that seems especially strange, let us recall that a whole lot of Christians think their God exists as the Father's own Son, and the Holy Spirit all at the same time and throughout all time. It's not so different. More importantly, it's consistent with Buddhist teaching itself. Recall that a foundational premise of Buddhism is that all appearance of separateness is just appearance, that every person, animal, plant, and thing is actually an illusory view of a single, coherent, universal one. So all Buddhas being one Buddha simultaneously present is only a small subset of everything being one, appearing to be separate, and being simultaneously present. Here is something that puzzles me, though, about multiple simultaneous Buddhas. In Buddhism, there are uncountably many monks and nuns and various divine beings, all of whom are well along their journey to Buddhahood. And we are told to expect every sentient being to eventually become a Buddha. And 105 billion people have lived on this planet. The Holy Goatee? I don't get it. Maybe he gave a list to do see all this? Lists are boring and you should do what makes you happy. That would be very big brain. Yet I have not found any reference to the idea that the world will gradually be populated by more and more simultaneously incarnate Buddhas, eventually including everyone. It seems that this would be an interesting and important subject, a transformational, growing, shared nirvana and ultimate human state in a Buddha-centric cosmology, but I have found no Buddhist discourse on this intriguing topic. It seems to me there should be some discussion of this ever-growing state of utopia, this ever more shared nirvana. In the same vein, after more than 2,000 years, why have we not seen even one more Buddha? Then there is also the simpler fact that there are billions of sentient beings simultaneously on Earth today, which is vastly many more than was the case hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago. Reincarnation recycles an existing pool of sentient beings, but I am not aware of anything in Buddhism that would have created all the additional sentient beings that exist today. Life sure sounds like a meat grinder. Gender in Buddhism. One is not surprised that a tradition begun thousands of years ago presupposes binary gender and fails to treat men and women identically. That said, note the following. Buddha's stepmother, who had raised him, was a sincere follower of his teaching and wanted to be ordained. Because she was a woman, he refused the request. She rallied 500 other women followers of his teaching to stage a protest. One of Buddha's disciples asked on their behalf if he meant it when he said that all beings have Buddha nature. Buddha then agreed to ordain all of the women in the group. This instance of a religious leader listening to a challenge from a follower and responsively changing his own publicly stated position, as well as going against a powerful cultural norm, remains a sadly rare event in the world of religion and in leadership generally. Goatee can be pronounced as fish. You know? Fair point. Fair point. The Lotus Sutra is referred to as the king of the sutras, as it is seen by many as Buddhism's most refined, most mature treatise, perhaps covering the entirety of Buddha's message, and certainly his most important teachings. The white lotus flower is a classical Indian symbol of purity, and this sutra being so named is taken as an indication that it is the purest expression of Buddha's thoughts. The white lotus is often seen as a symbol of Buddha himself, or of enlightenment, arising from the literal mud of earthly existence, yet unstained by the mud as it floats on the pond above. Lovely as that is, like any religion, Buddhism also contains some mud of its own. In particular, I have in mind that the Lotus Sutra, consistent with the culture in which Buddhism arose, contains praise for total self-immolation, as well as immolation of fingers, toes, or whole limbs. I do not share that praise. The Mud Lotus Paradigm. Thich Nhat Hanh, a Thien Buddhist monk who played a prominent role in presenting Buddhism to the West in the 20th and early 21st centuries, famously said, and titled one of his books, "No mud, no lotus." Footnote: the full title of the book is No Mud, No Lotus: The Art of Transforming Suffering. This is a delightful and compact way of saying that if you want to get life's beauty, you must accept life's muck. It more colorfully echoes Buddha telling us that there is no life without dukkha. Life's goodness and pains do not come separately, only together. In both Buddha's and Han's view, the mud and lotus, dukkha and enlightenment, are not merely companions, they are interdependent. You aren't going to get life's beauty or enlightenment if you don't begin by accepting the existence and impact of life's muck and challenges. That is, denial doesn't work. Facing reality does, and only facing reality does. Han is among those who allege that reality requires this interdependence. He says that contrasts such as pleasure and pain, fulfillment and dissatisfaction, and so on, must coexist, or neither can exist. Although such couplets are common and easy to note, reality does not keep score like this. For example, if you had no ability to feel pain, the pleasure chemical dopamine would still produce pleasure. Conversely, if you could feel pain but had no dopamine production, breaking a bone would still hurt. If there were no evil, we would still perceive varying degrees of good. Han is a monk, not a scientist, so I find it easy to forgive his assumption that contrasting pairs are necessary. Certainly, many people make the same assertion. I think that is mistaken, but readily agree that understanding of one's own life and compassion for others are both enhanced when one has significant experience with a broad range of life experiences. The Parable of the Lost Son. The Lost Son is a famous parable written within the Lotus Sutra. Unfortunately, what it lacks in storytelling charm, it makes up for in sheer length. This parable is not famous because it is pithy or poignant. It is neither. It is famous for an allegory for the entire human journey to enlightenment. To dispense with this parable's contrivances and state it plainly, the idea is that we are all born at one with our Buddha nature, quickly drift away from it and suffer, and by living a proper life, we may regain enlightenment even without being on a conscious search for it, because Buddha nature is our birthright. Nice, but I live by the tenet, no pain, no pain. Tantra. The Sanskrit word tantra literally refers to a weaving loom. Like many words in Sanskrit and Pali, this one word has several context-sensitive metaphorical meanings. Tantra can refer to any coherent idea, doctrine, or practice one might weave out of constituent threads. Hence, many writings we would call treatises are referred to as tantras. In the West, the word tantra is usually misconstrued to refer only to a treatise on sexual practices. This tiny subset of the Tantric literature simply reflects that in Tantric Buddhism, there is no such thing as a part of life that is excluded from the realm of spiritual opportunity. All of life can be part of your spiritual path. Tantric Buddhism includes, Vajrayana, Mantrayana, Mantranaya, Guhya Mantrayana, and esoteric Buddhism. Most forms of Buddhism focus on one's gradually deepened understanding of numerous sutras. By contrast, Tantric Buddhism is more experiential and immediate than cognitive and gradual. That might sound like Zen, but they do have this general idea in common, but Zen and Tantric Buddhism are quite distinct nonetheless. Tantric Buddhism has a focus on the use of mantras, sounds, words, or phrases, and mandalas, visual designs, in meditation, the memorization and recitation of specific phrases or entire sutras, a type of praying, chanting, focusing attention on religious icons, statuary, shrines, or relics, and other common religious devotional practices. Zen considers such things incidentally useful at best and misleading impediments at worst. Also, Tantric Buddhism eagerly anticipates imminent enlightenment even in one's first lifetime as a practitioner, while Zen allows for that but considers it an exceedingly rare exception to the typical case of a many lifetimes journey. And more. As you would imagine about a tradition that is thousands of years old, there is very much more to even the basic set of Buddhist concepts than what has been included in this book. As noted in the beginning, this book is not intended to be a course on Buddhism. Rather, it is a book that brings selected aspects of Buddhist teachings to a wider audience. If this inclines you to learn more about Buddhism, please do. There are abundant resources online, in books, and in people and temples. You can explore Buddhism in any of its many varieties, from the most religious to the most secular. Whether you look further into Buddhism or not, I hope this book helps you to deal with life's toughest challenges, to enjoy life's great goodness more fully, and to default to a state of mind that is calm yet attentive, fully engaged in and yet not dragged around by the events in your life. And at the end of this month, we will continue with a chapter called Secular Zen in Context. How many chapters do we have left? Well, the next one's quite long, so we won't do all of it. But it is the last chapter. So, I think that puts us on schedule to finish this book in May. Which is interesting, because I think I might have started doing readings from it in May? I don't remember now. Point is, we're getting close to the end. Alright. I'm tired. Think I'm gonna take a nap before I exercise with my dad. Do I have anything else to share? One full circle, all the way around the sun. I just saw that. I guess this chapter on Buddhism is like a recap episode or lore dump. That's funny. Yay, exercise! And as a reminder, my dad is currently writing, getting close to finishing, a book called Exercise for People Who Hate Exercise as Much as I Do. And I will let people know when that's out. I'm certainly benefiting from it. All right. I'm very tired. But things are going well. I'm happy to have a proper stream for like the first time in 2026. And yeah, here's a blast from the past. I have an end screen again. So be kind to yourselves and be kind to each other, and I will see you later. Bye-bye!